This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
You are listening to the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, part of the CLNS Media Network. This episode brought to you by Prizepicks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the Prizepicks app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You also want to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. And eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Bedard50 off and use code Bedard50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Well, obviously, Greg, we have a lot to cover. A lot has happened over the past couple of days. I know that you did a podcast, I believe, on Friday night after the first couple of rounds. So this podcast is going to be more focused on what happened yesterday, day 3, and some of the fallout from the draft. So let's take a look at what happened yesterday, day 3. And we begin with pick 106. And I think this was one of the more polarizing picks of the day, Greg, because not a lot of people knew about this guy when he was drafted, and that's safety Craig Woodson from California.
Yeah, for sure, Nick. When you look at basically everything they did until the late in the draft when they were just kind of effing around and filling some needs that needed to be filled at, kicker and long snapper was a bit of a surprise. And then, trading down to Mr. Irrelevant, which I'm sure, a lot of us were super excited about, especially us in the media. That pick, when you look at the totality of what they did, if you believe in value and consensus and things like that, that's probably the one outlier in their whole draft, which was, for the first time in a long time, as far as the Patriots go, sort of a sensible paint by numbers, this is what we're going to do draft. And they come out on day 3 and, they draft Craig Woodson, the California safety. And by most consensus, that was a quote unquote reach. Certainly I thought Ryan Cowden, I sort of pressed him on Woodson about the value and things like that. And I thought he was, really good. And, and in fact, he brought up Kevin Byard, who they had in Tennessee, who was sort of like an unknown guy, one of the best linebackers in the league during his time. This is also the same crew that got Amani Hooker sort of later on in the draft. But here's the big thing for me. And this is where I differ than a lot of people. Like, people know, like, at this point, like, I'm not a draft Nick. I don't really care, who they draft or where they draft them, really, unless it's completely outrageous. The draft ended at 11 o'clock on Friday night. They had from then until they drafted 4th in the 4th round, sometime like 12:30 or whatever, to understand who they were going to target with their first pick. And I'm sure they talked about it that night. They probably took a quick look at the board and they say, what's everybody thinking? And let's sleep on it. Let's come back. And then they come to a consensus. So these guys, it wasn't a situation in the middle of a round where somebody jumped in front of them and now they're scrambling on the clock and they just pick a guy. Like, no, this was set, they had about 12 hours to decide what they were going to do. And they identified this kid from Cal who, in our Zoom with him, seems extremely smart, extremely hardworking. He's got some nice skills. He's got some nice measurables. Not, the most impressive resume for a lot of people, but it's obvious that the Patriots identified this guy. It looks like they said, we need to get a guy. They went into this draft, and I think we can all agree after we see the results, these guys had a plan for what they were going to do from the free agency to the draft. This is what we're going to do. This is what we need on this team. And one of the things they identified was we need a quarterback at safety. We're not sure exactly where he's going to fit as far as free safety or strong safety or nickel or whatever, but we need a future Devin McCourty type because we don't have that right now. And they identified this kid, Woodson, from Cal, and they jumped on him. And so just from that respect, like, I have no issue with the pick. I mean, we'll see if they were right or wrong. But to me, this was another pick where you could tell these guys had conviction on this player. And to me, that's good enough.
Yeah, and you look at round 4, right? And as you said, Greg, they had a lot of time to sit on this pick and figure out what they wanted to do. And if you look at the safety position, it's interesting. The Patriots obviously picked the first safety in round 4, but from pick 118 to pick 130, you had Billy Bowman from Oklahoma go. You had Lathan Ransom from Ohio State go. And you also had Malachi Moore from Alabama go. So you had 3 safeties from 118 to 130 go. So same position, and you picked Woodson at 106. So it feels like the Patriots had an understanding that in the 4th round that there could be several safeties going in that round, and maybe they felt, hey, if we wait until round 5, if we wait that long, this guy might not be there. So he might be a quote unquote reach at 106, but we feel he's as good. We feel he's better than these other safeties that are on the board. But if there are 4 or 5 safeties that go in this round, we're going to miss out on that quarterback at the safety position. So instead of messing around, let's just draft the guy that we love. Let's pick him and hope he works out. Let's jump to the next pick.
Hey, hang on with just 1 second on that. Like,
sure.
I think, that was, as opposed to last year when we all lamented that the Patriots were a day late and $1 short on a lot of runs. This was a draft where the Patriots were, at the forefront. I mean, you could say Travion Henderson was the beginning because RJ Harvey went not too long after that, and a few other running backs in the 2nd round. I think there was a run. I think Kyle Williams was more in the middle of the run of receivers, which is fine. Joshua Farmer, the defensive tackle who we're about to talk about.
Yep.
I think that was before a big run of defensive tackle. They got Borregales, the kicker, right before the Ravens with their whole Justin Tucker situation. They went kicker. So these guys were dialed in, knew what they wanted, and got ahead of things. And compared to last year, it was like a complete 180.
Yeah, great point. That's where I was going to start with Farmer, because they trade up. What was it from? I think 144. I think the pick was that they had. They traded up, I think, from 144 to 137 to draft Joshua Farmer, a defensive tackle from Florida State. And as you said, Greg, you look at round 5, 140, pick 140, Cam Jackson, defensive tackle, Florida. 142, Seahawks, my guy Riley Mills from Notre Dame, defensive tackle. 143, Dolphins, Jordan Phillips, defensive tackle, Maryland. 148, Rams, Ty Hamilton, defensive tackle, Ohio State. So the Patriots obviously sitting there at 144, which I believe was the original pick, unless I'm wrong by a spot or two. You're sitting there at 144.
Yeah, it was 144, and they traded up to 138.
Okay, so I think it was 137, but whatever. You jump up 6 or 7 spots, and you get ahead of the Panthers, who went defensive tackle. You get ahead of the Seahawks, who went defensive tackle. You get ahead of the Dolphins, who went defensive tackle. And you land the guy that you love in Joshua Farmer. So talk about that defensive lineman, Greg, from Florida State.
Yeah, I think he's really impressive. And, we talked about, or at least I talked about with Zanis about going into day 3 as far as, what they might do in terms of the depth of the draft and what you might be able to get in terms of value. That I thought, while defensive tackle and edge weren't glaring needs, I thought the value was going to be too much to pass up for them, and they do go defensive tackle. They do go edge on day 3 with, some really good picks. And Farmer, I see him, he's 6'3", 312. I see him as more, he's like a 3 technique, certainly gives you options. We talked about upgrading sort of the rotation on the interior. He's probably long-term, he's probably more Milton Williams, who's more of a classic 3 technique than, say, like Christian Barmore, but he gives you coverage for Barmore. Should something happen and, he goes into a good room, he's short and thick, but he's got long arms, which is very unusual. He's got high upside. To me, he's a for the first year or two or what have you, sort of a rotational sub rusher type of guy, but a really good football player that can push the line. More guys he can gap penetrate, which we know they want to do in the scheme. So I thought it was a really good pick, really good value for this team.
Next up, we got Bradyn Swinson, edge from LSU, of course, played along with Will Campbell on the opposite side of the football. And I thought it was interesting, Greg, at 106 when the Patriots drafted Woodson, there was a lot of fandom for Jack Sawyer. A lot of people wanted the Patriots to pick Jack Sawyer. And if it wasn't going to be Sawyer, who ended up with the Steelers, and Sawyer is a perfect Steelers player. It's like if you were going to cast a movie of draft picks this year for the Steelers, mm-hmm. Jack Sawyer would have been the leading man. But a lot of Patriots fans wanted edge. Why didn't they draft an edge, at 106? Well, they got their edge at 146 with Swinson. What'd you think?
Yeah, I thought, look, it's sort of a future bet. I mean, you're talking about a good sized guy at, 6'3.5", 255. Arms are, 33.5 inches. He's got long arms, strong hands. He's speed, his explosiveness on the outside. He's a designated pass rusher type. It's funny, we were talking about, I think after day one, where I was like, they should name Will Campbell like assistant GM. And guess what? They get one of his teammates on edge who he practices up against every single day. And he talked about it in the Zoom. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they got a little intel from Will Campbell on that. But, I really like the prospect. I think he's, like I said, he's going to come in and he's going to, have to be he's going to be like a Josh Uche type, but he's got much more potential in terms of, thickness and ability. He's got a long ways to go in terms of defending the run and playing the edge and all that stuff. But, that's why you pick them where you do, and then you train them up from there.
All right, let's run through these last four here quickly. Andres Borregales, the kicker from Miami, went at 182. He was the best kicker in college football last year, Greg.
Yeah, we anticipated this. Joey Sly has moved on. John Parker Romo is the only other kicker on the team, and I have no idea who that is. He could walk up to me tomorrow, and I would know who he was. So you knew that they were going to do this, and Borregales is known as the top prospect in this draft. They basically took him right in front of the Ravens, who took Tyler Loop, going through the whole Justin Tucker situation. And so I would say the only worry, and we'll have to see how it goes, and this will be an issue, and it's not the first time northern teams have gone through this, but a Miami kicker coming up and kicking in New England and Buffalo and all that stuff. I mean, that's going to be a question until it's answered. But look, they got the top kicker. We'll see how he does, because this is a different league, and kickers are weird dudes, and you never know whether they're going to have it or when they're going to lose it, and we'll have to see.
The most intriguing guy late was pick 220, Marcus Bryant. A lot of talk about Armand Membu as we got ready for Thursday night. The Patriots draft Missouri's left tackle, the other tackle that played alongside with Membu last year. This guy's intriguing, Greg. He's a pretty big human being.
Oh, he's enormous. I'm just trying to look for it. He's 6'7", 320, and he ran a 4.97.
Crazy.
40
That's crazy.
At that size. That's absurd. His relative athletic score is like through the roof. Of course, I don't know if the Patriots are just like assembling like oddly built tackles, but we all know about Will Campbell and his wingspan and his arm length. But here you have Marcus Bryant, this gigantic man with long arms that are almost 35 inches. And guess what? he has tiny little hands. Like he has hands under 9 inches. How is that possible? That he's 6'7" and he has 35-inch arms and his hands are under 9 inches. Like, where are they finding these guys? But anyways, like, at least the good thing about like having small hands when you have long arms is like, it, large hands are, and Campbell has decently sized hands, not the biggest in the world, but you use your hands when you don't have length, because you sort of use them as like Velcro to the foot. You get your hands on them. If you have strong hands, you can control the rusher. He's going to have to live on like punching, his length, keeping them outside, because with the smaller hands, he's not going to be able to grapple with them. I mean, just think of, Logan Mankins had short arms, but he had freaking oven mitts for hands at over 11 inches. And so, look, yeah, I mean, he's a late round pick, but if you look at the film, and I'll look at more as it's not like I've studied it, but this dude is physically imposing. If you're looking for a developmental tackle, this guy fits the bill, because physically he has everything you want. And now it's up to the coaches. And we've talked about this before, but they have 3 veteran offensive line coaches now. Now they can, take Kugler and say, all right, you're going to take these 3 guys and you're these 3 young guys, and you're going to train them up and all that stuff. And so he's going to be one of these projects that they look to bring along slowly. I doubt that he's going to be in the swing tackle mix. I mean, he's still going to have to show something to make the roster. Where they took him, it's not automatic that he's going to be on the team. Do you want a guy who maybe he's not going to play for 3 years to take up a roster spot? Ideally, he's on the practice squad. Can he get there? All that stuff. But I love the idea of taking a developmental tackle. I'll take one every single year or more if you can.
Yeah, I love it. I'm never going to complain about a team taking a shot, throwing a dart at a guy with that kind of size who played tackle. You never know. If you hit, you hit, right? So you might as well swing for the fences there. I keep laughing because for some reason my mind went immediately to, like, I was trying to think about a visual with the long arms and the tiny hands, and I thought of like those broom hand, like just take a long broom handle and at the end put those little, like, those tiny hands, the little tiny hand toys that you can put on at the end of your fingers. And just, I don't know, just the long arms and the really tiny hands got me. All right. Last 2 picks. We don't want to spend a ton of time here. We got other stuff to talk about, but long snapper 251, Julian Ashby from Vanderbilt, and Mr. Irrelevant, which Greg was very excited to wait for at 257 was Kobe Minor, cornerback from Memphis.
Yeah. Ashby, the long snapper, we heard Eliot Wolf say, he was the best long snapper in the draft. You don't normally draft kickers, punters, and long snappers unless you think that they're going to make the roster and be your kicker, long snapper, or what have you. So definitely a danger zone for Joe Cardona, who, look, I'm not Mr. Special Teams or anything like that, but I wouldn't say he's been as rock solid as he used to be in his career. The Patriots have had some blocked kicks. They've had some tough snaps. It wouldn't be a surprise, I think, Nick. I don't know how you feel, but they've already moved on from 4 of the 6 captains from last year. There's 2 more remaining. One is Jabril Peppers. The other is Joe Cardona. I don't think it would be a shock to anyone if we're looking at a whole new Patriots leadership regime under Vrabel and company, and this pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Dane Brugler. If you were wondering, Dane Brugler had Julian Ashby as the 5th ranked long snapper. So a major reach here by the Patriots in the long snapping market. And I also thought about our guy Alex Barth, who had been talking about Donato Crisanti from Rhode Island. And I'm going to bring him up because I'm a URI alum. And I had said on the show Thursday that I did with Beadle and Perry on draft day that, oh man, I was hoping that Donato Crisanti was going to end up a Patriot, because that would have been one of the best victory laps of anybody in the media Barth running around saying, I told you about Crisanti, the long snapper, the UDFA. So I was brokenhearted for Barth when I saw that Ashby was the pick. And then, of course, I don't know if you froze for a second there. You didn't talk about Kobe Minor, did you? The cornerback from Memphis. All right, so Mr. Irrelevant, anything on him? Any thoughts quickly?
No, seems like a really good kid. Well traveled. I think he was at 3 different colleges. I found it interesting. He didn't bring this up, but I found it like after the fact in the bio that the Patriots sent out. He's the youngest of 8 kids. I want to say one of their earlier picks, I think it wasn't Woodson. I think it was Farmer or Swinson. I'm pretty sure it was Farmer. He's the youngest of 6 kids. But look, you can always use cornerbacks. He has some inside outside versatility, and we'll see how he does.
If you were wondering, Dan Brugler had him ranked as his 127th cornerback. So, some context.
Major reach.
Yeah, major reach.
Yeah.
At Mr. Irrelevant, huge reach. 4, 5, 6 in the 40. So, and if you're wondering, I can't get over the hand thing. Just to get back to the hand conversation quickly, Greg said.
I just picture Kristen Wiig going like that.
Exactly, with like the Kristen Wiig hands at the end of the broom handles.
Yeah. We need a local SNL act with Will Campbell and his short arms and the big fella in his small hands.
So Marcus Bryant has under 9-inch hands, and he's like 6'7", whatever the hell. Kobe Minor's 5'11", 188, and he has 10-inch hands.
Wow.
So just think about that for a minute, okay? A 5'10" cornerback has larger hands than a 6'7" tackle. All right, we got a lot more.
Well, Will Campbell's young, and he's going to grow some more.
We got more to talk about, but first, Greg wants to talk about Game Time.
Yes, I certainly do. It's the playoffs in hockey and basketball. You got to be there. Of course, in Boston, we don't have hockey because our team stinks, and so does Don Sweeney. But the Celtics are going hot, and you got to be there in person to feel it. You got a big game today. Who knows? Could be 2-2. Could be coming back here for some big games, and you got to get the Game Time to get into those games. It's the best place. It makes getting tickets faster and easier, even for hard to get playoff seats. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. Save up to 60% with last-minute deals off buying for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Zone deals save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. All-in pricing, toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Those are so annoying. Seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. It's a must for me. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. What time is it? Game Time.
Wonder how many people would have bought tickets to that Bruins press conference last week. Woof. For those listening, by the way, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Patriots content. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. All right, let's look at this roster, Greg. And on paper, you and I always say that. We pound that point home before they kick the football off in September. On paper, there's actually some talk, Greg, right now of the playoffs. Dare I say it?
Yeah, I mean, you should definitely dare to say it. Look, I'm not saying that the Patriots are going to be in the playoffs, but just talking about competing for a playoff spot, being there at the end, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be in that conversation. I mean, you look at this roster. We all knew basically about the defense from free agency. They filled a lot of holes, brought a lot of people in. They got 2 really top cornerbacks. They have a great defensive line. They remade the linebacker room. We'll see how the safety position sort of, fills out. They brought in Marcus Epps. Still have Kyle Duggar. We'll see if guys like Jabril Peppers and Marte Mapu are here. But you look at the offense now, and we'll see when Kyle Williams hits. You're hoping it's early, but that can be rough for receivers. But you already have Stephon Diggs, Mac Hollins, Demario Douglas. There's going to be a lot of competition. You look at the offensive line. You now have Will Campbell at left tackle. I think it's, to me, Jared Wilson, the sort of future center that they drafted. He was actually mostly a guard. He only moved to center last year. So he could be your opening day left guard starter. Bradbury in the middle, veteran experience. Michael Wenu, Morgan Moses, veteran experience. You had Trayvon Henderson as sort of the explosive pass back. Kyle Williams and Henderson are there for explosive plays. Hopefully Diggs gets here. I mean, you look at this roster, Nick, and they filled every real major need. Now, look, a lot of things need to happen. And what people also have to keep in mind, maybe if the Patriots get off to a slow start, you still have to keep in mind, they brought in a lot of new people. I mean, whether it's free agency or the draft. They brought in an entirely new coaching staff with, for the most part, for most of the guys, new schemes. This stuff does not hit instantaneously. If the Patriots don't go 4-0, if they go 1-3 or 0-4 out of the blocks, it doesn't mean this experiment was wrong and flawed and all this stuff. It's going to take some time. Sometimes, most of the time, I would say it takes upwards of half a year. But if these coaches are as good as we think they are, if we think Mike Vrabel is as good as we think he is, and a lot of guys, including Drake May, making a year 2 bump, I mean, I think that you look at this roster, I think it's ready to compete. And, I'm not the only one. Eliot Wolf basically said, we will, what was his quote? He said, I think we'll be much more competitive this year. Yeah. And that should be the expectation. I thought the Patriots did an excellent job. I'm not going to put a grade on it. I don't do that. But I'll just say, in terms of the totality of the offseason, I think they've done a tremendous job bringing up the compete level of this team. And there's no reason why they shouldn't be expected to at least compete for a playoff spot this year.
You just mentioned a comment from Wolf the other night. Another comment that really jumped out at me was the difference between this offseason and last offseason. And Wolf said the following, quote, "I just think the whole vision for the team was really good. Not that we didn't have that last year or with Bill previously, but there was a lot of clear communication between Vrabel and our staff. He was around a lot in our meetings. It was just a really good process. I would say, as the guys are still working on it right now," and then he says, hopefully they're closing out on UDFAs. And this is on me from last year. We just did not have an organized enough process. And Ryan Cowden and Coach Vrabel and Stretch really came in and helped me organize this. I think we're going to have a productive group. What'd you take from that?
Yeah, I thought it was, really profound. I understand Eliot, taking some of the blame. But, to me, it just goes back to the decision-making of the Crafts when they decided to move on from Bill. And, we talked about this at the time going, whether it was Bill or, letting go of Gerard, the owner needs to have a vision for what the team's going to look like in terms of, you need to empower somebody. Somebody's got to be the lead dog.
Yeah.
And it's either the GM, you have a strong GM, or you should have a strong head coach. When Mayo and Wolf, basically both of them were promoted, it was just sort of like, all right, you guys figure it out. And no one was really empowered. Remember, at the time, Wolf didn't have any sort of title. It was just, he basically continued on with his title. He didn't get the title until after the offseason of executive vice president of personnel. And Gerard was the head coach, but obviously he didn't know what the hell he was doing and had no plan for anything. And so it was just sort of, it was a big mess. Like, I think if the Crafts, it might have been a little bit different, not a whole lot different, but at least in terms of personnel, if the Crafts said, like, went through the process and said, Eliot Wolf is our GM, executive vice president of personnel, and he's in charge of all that, it might have been a little bit different. But it also goes to, what I've heard from a long time is that Eliot Wolf last year basically had to run personnel, whether it was the free agency or the draft or what have you, with one arm tied behind his back, because he had to hold Jerod Mayo's hand on everything, including how to organize and script practices and when they're going to practice and all this stuff. Like, it just, I'm not going to say it was unfair to Eliot, but it was just, the whole situation was just all effed up. And now you bring in Mike Vrabel and his, band of merry men with Cowden and Stryker. And these guys knew exactly what they want to do. They know how to organize things. They have a vision for what they're going to do. And that for everybody else in the organization, that's just like a huge sigh of relief, because they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And, and Vrabel's involved with a lot of these things where, you didn't know what Gerard was doing, and Bill's doing his own thing when he was here. So it's just a complete, 180. This is now, like we've said many times, and we said the other day, the adults are back in the room. This is now a real professional football organization, and the results speak for themselves.
Last offseason was a disaster on so many different levels, and it began with the process with Robert Kraft. We don't have to relive the thing, but my goodness. I said this when the Patriots hired Mike Vrabel. If I wanted to put a headline on that hiring, the Patriots franchise is serious again. And that's why I wanted Vrabel here, because he knows what a program looks like. He's run one. He understands what needs to happen. He understands who his, right-hand man or right-hand men are going to be. And when you hire somebody like Vrabel, who's done this before and is a well-respected head coach throughout the league and built a pretty good program in Tennessee, you were serious once again. And I think that has played out. One more thing I wanted to mention, Greg, about Eliot Wolf and the media. This jumped out at me big time on Friday night. I don't know if it jumped out at you, but I saw a different Eliot Wolf standing up at the podium on Friday night after round, 3. After the first 3 rounds, I saw a confident Eliot Wolf. I saw maybe even a little bit of a cocky Eliot Wolf. I saw somebody who was, and it was striking, because he's never looked this way before. And he's been killed for it, and justifiably so. When you go back to the really strange press conference or media session he had, I think it was last August at camp or whatever, and he was defensive and he was like all over. He actually looked comfortable, Greg. Now, you can read this 2 ways. Some Patriots fans will say, yeah, because he doesn't have the final say anymore. He doesn't have to worry about it as much. Others will say, no, he's just a more confident guy, second year round, and knows what he needs to do and who he is. What'd you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I more noticed it. There were some, because he's never really had to speak in public. I mean, the Packers didn't really do it. When he was with the Browns, and of course, when he came here, he's with Bill. So, not a whole lot of that stuff. So he just doesn't have the reps. Trust me, I know. Like, when I started doing in the Boston market, or even in Green Bay, when I started doing a lot of radio and TV, I was the same way. I was a little, shaky, and it just, comes from, you get a little bit more comfortable. But, yeah, I agree with you. I thought, especially on day 3, the Zoom that we had, like, that's the Eliot Wolf that I know and that I've known over the years that I've observed. Like, he's a pretty cocky guy now. He's very confident in his abilities. He's very confident in his evaluation of players, and he, even the way he walks is sort of cocky. I mean, Eliot got his groove back. Now, what that means and how much he had to do with who was picked and what, and who's the final say, which I believe it's Vrabel. The fact of the matter is, I think the entire organization has a lot more confidence now, and I think that's from it stems from Vrabel, and like you said, but yes, I agree with you that Eliot got his groove back, and he's walking the walk, and we'll see whether they can back it up or not.
All right, Eliot also mentioned this healthy debate that the Patriots front office had in the draft room on Friday night, right before they made the pick at number 38. Greg's got some intel on who the mystery man was behind that healthy debate they had. But first, let's hear about Prizepicks.
Prizepicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prizepicks. I'll have the app out. I'll be sitting on the couch watching the C's later today, and I'll be mashing those buttons more or less, trying to make some cash. You should too. It's a bunch of fun. Prizepicks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. The app is really easy to use. To create a lineup, all you do is pick more or less on a few player stats for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. Yeah, they got basketball, they got baseball, hockey, esports, and so much more. The playoffs are here in basketball and hockey, and Prizepicks is the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Don't miss your chance to cash in as the league's best fight for conference and league titles. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game.
So Eliot Wolf, during that press conference on Friday night, was talking about the pick at number 38. And, he mentioned this healthy debate that he and the others had in the room, and then said something along the lines, I don't have the direct quote, but he said that whoever they were debating about in the room at 38 ended up getting picked. So it really didn't matter anyway. Greg, who was the mystery man they were debating? What have you been told?
So according to multiple league sources, the player that they were discussing was Arizona guard / tackle Jonah. Maybe you know how to pronounce this name. Svaiinaea? I don't know how to pronounce it. But anyways.
Svaiinaea.
Oh, wow, I wasn't even close. Svaiinaea?
Svaiinaea.
All right, well, whatever. Anyways.
Svaiinaea.
Okay.
All right.
He was the guy. And the Dolphins happened to all of a sudden jump in front of the Patriots, sending, I think, a third-round pick to the Raiders, and they jumped in front of the Patriots and took them. So it's sort of like an interesting sliding doors, type of moment. I'm trying to look. So let's just say, so we know what the Patriots ended up with. They ended up with Travion Henderson. Who'd they take next? Was it Kyle Williams?
Yeah, it was at 69 was Kyle Williams.
Yeah. And then they took the center out of Georgia.
Jared Wilson. Yep.
Jared Wilson. So that's what the Patriots ended up. Now, let's just say that the Dolphins don't trade up, and the Patriots, instead of taking Henderson, they take Jonah, Big Jonah, from Arizona, which it makes a lot of sense that those were the two debates, because we talked about it going into day 2, that basically you looked at the board and the way it fell. I figured they would go in some sort of order of offensive line, and we talked about the need. You and I both preferred a guard tackle type that can cover you in a couple different areas in case some things don't work out and what have you, like our guy from Ohio State, Donovan Jackson, who went in the first round. So it looks like the Patriots prioritized a guy like that. And so that makes sense. But just in case, let's say the Patriots do pick him. And so you get you get the Arizona guard tackle. He was a tackle at college. He projects to a guard in the pros. At 69, so they picked 69. I went with R.J. Harvey, the UCF running back, who I really like, because I think the Broncos, if Henderson doesn't get picked by the Patriots, if it drops a little bit, I think the Broncos take Henderson at 60 instead of they ended up taking Harvey. They were really hot on Henderson. And then 77.
Let me just jump in there for a second, because Bert mentioned this on Thursday night on NBC Sports Boston. The Broncos were at least contemplating drafting Henderson at, what was it, 20? I think it was 20 in the first round. So, yeah, you're right. They were reportedly – they really, really liked Henderson if they want running back there.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been surprised if they wouldn't if they moved up to draft Henderson. And maybe the Patriots at 69 have a chance at RJ Harvey. Now, the Patriots traded down from 77, but with Jalen Noel staring them in the face, would they have done that? So the alternate draft with the Patriots, if the Dolphins traded up, are Jonah, RJ Harvey, and Jalen Noel. Which draft do you have? Which one do you prefer? I actually like the way it worked out for the Patriots. I like what they did, and they got the trade down at the same time and got Jared Wilson. I like the way it worked out for the Patriots. Would you have preferred the other path?
I'm okay with how it worked out. If Wilson can play guard, I'm okay with how it worked out. I do like the versatility that they would have had, and it would have made us look really smart, because again, we talked about Donovan Jackson and other guys. And this, I'm just going to put this up there. Okay, if you're watching, you're not going to probably be able to read it, but I want to make sure that people see that I have my computer right here. I got my computer right in front of the camera, and that's my Slack. And what I have highlighted is a comment that I typed up on Friday night as soon as that Dolphins trade happened. And sometimes, Greg, you've gone through this, I'm sure. You have a thought, and sometimes you don't throw it out into the ether. And this could work either one of two ways. You could say, thank God I didn't tweet that out. I would have looked like an idiot. But sometimes, every once in a while, sun shines on a dog's ass every once in a while. Sometimes you have this thought, and you don't throw it out into the universe, and you go, damn it. If I threw that out there days later, I might have looked like, I would have, I nailed that thing in real time. I knew what I was talking about, which of course gives you credibility, and that's important in our business. So when that trade happened, I told Greg before we jumped on to record this that I was typing up every pick throughout this draft because I'm a loser. And when we got to 37, I have 37 Dolphins in parentheses trade. And then I have Jonah. And the comment that I have after that, and I bolded this, and I didn't bring it up in my podcast, my Everything Pats podcast on Friday night. I didn't bring it up on Twitter, but I typed up, did they jump the Pats because they thought they were going to draft him? And that's what Greg is telling us. Yes, because I saw that it was weird to me that the Dolphins jumped up to draft a guard. It just seemed a little weird in the moment. And the fact that they jumped the Patriots, the division rival, made me think about it even stronger. And that the next, if you look at it, the next guard that was taken was Tate Ratledge at 57. And that was the Lions traded up to draft Ratledge. So that thought did cross my mind in real time. I just didn't throw it out there. So,
and I do think, like, if you're when the Patriots, when they sort of, take a couple days off and then come back and sort of self-scout themselves from the draft. I think, one of the points, and it's minor, it's not a big deal. This stuff happens, but, if somebody's got to ask the question, how did the Dolphins know that we were so into this guy that they jumped us? Like, we need to kind of figure that out to get better for next year, that sort of thing.
I can't agree with you more. And it's interesting because Svaiinaea is... Dane Brugler had him ranked, as his fourth best guard, and he had him in his top 100 at 55. So him going 37 was a little bit earlier than most people thought he would go. So that even lends more credence to what you just said, Greg. How did the Dolphins know that at 38, the Patriots were looking at that guy who was ranked by a lot of people to be behind Ratledge, who went at 57? So the Dolphins got some really good intel from somebody, and who knows who that somebody was.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Before we look at competitions, just one more question for you, Greg. You asked, I believe you asked Eliot Wolf about the flexibility to add a big piece throughout the remainder of this offseason. What Wolf say, and how'd you take it?
He said, I think we have some flexibility. He said, this is Richard Miller, who is the team's director of research / cap guru, might tell me differently, but that's his job. We'll definitely look at different ways to improve the team, whether that's a trade or someone that might become available later. To me, that's a signal that things have cooled there. And like we've talked about previously, which nobody really has, now that they're done with this draft, the Patriots are over, just in terms of their player expenses. They're over $300 million now once they start signing this class on what they've spent, let alone what they just had to pay off the former coaching staff and head coach and bring in these guys. It would be nice that if I thought he was gonna be a little bit more affirmative about it, that he's gonna be like, oh yeah, we can definitely, we're definitely looking to improve this team. This was more like, I think they're pretty much done. But, hopefully there is some flexibility. I do think when you look at what they spend year to year in the 3-year cycle, and we've been over this before, I do think there is a little bit of flexibility for them to do something, add a big piece, maybe if they're, you never know. And what I'm talking about in terms of these disgruntled people with their contracts and wide receivers and holdouts and things like that, like things are going to happen. Now, I don't think like Colton Miller's coming in here. Not every guy who holds out of voluntary workouts in a contract year is going to get traded, like everybody on Twitter thinks. But there is that potential, and we'll have to see, especially, now that the draft, who teams drafted, whether they have a surplus. Like, I think they're more likely to do those, maybe bottom of the roster guys. Like one team just drafted like a 4th wide receiver, and they're going to get rid of this guy who's in a contract year. But I just found it interesting. I thought he would be a little bit stronger, saying, oh yeah, we definitely have a chance to do some major things if we want to. Doesn't sound like it so much.
Here's the one thing I'll say is that it's always nice to add a big piece and to improve your football team. But to go back to the playoff conversation we had a little while ago, it should feel really good for Patriots fans. It should feel really good for this front office that you can look at this roster and say, they're not desperate to add a piece. They're really not. They're not in that desperation mode. Again, you can always upgrade, and we always want them to upgrade. But, like going out and getting a true bona fide wide receiver 1 would be nice, obviously. But they're not in that kind of state that you're going into this camp season going, my God, they don't have this, and this. That's a good spot to be in.
Yeah, and then, Nick, one more thing on that. I'm more likely, considering where they've gotten this roster to, I'm much more likely, if I was the general manager of the Patriots, I would wait to see what I have during training camp, towards the end of training camp, right before the season, see if there's any injuries, if they're thin in a spot, or not only that, but I would be more willing to save my bullets for the trade deadline, just in case you do suffer an injury and you see this team's pretty close. And if we, this guy got hurt, but if we can add a veteran at that spot to make us a little bit better, this team is still on track. I think I'm now in that camp where I think they've done a good enough job. I think they've done a great job of getting this roster to this point. I'm now going to wait and save my bullets just in case I need them.
All right, before we get to 3 of the heaviest competitions on paper right now for this roster, let's first have Greg tell you about the fine people and the service that they provide at Factor.
Ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has made chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto meals based on a randomized, controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto. Results will vary depending on diet and exercise, with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week. It's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. Choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto, which is what I get. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. I'm telling you, the seasoning for this stuff, the sauces, it's like you're eating in a gourmet restaurant. And the thing is, it comes directly to your house in great packaging. You get it out, pop it in the refrigerator till you need it, pop it in the microwave 2-3 minutes tops, and you have a restaurant-style food. It's really amazing. I'm telling you. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Bedard50 off and use code Bedard50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code Bedard50 off at factormeals.com/Bedard50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
You also want to check out BSJ, $50 for the year. Bedard Giardi with all the draft coverage. You want to download that Prizepicks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. And you can always take the guesswork out of buying tickets during this playoff time with Gametime. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. All right. We had veterans on the hot seat planned. We're going to push that to some point later this week because I don't want to go too far over an hour.
Or they could pay for BSJ and read my column.
Or you can do that. Yes, or you can do that. But I do want to discuss quickly 3 positions now that you look on this roster that I think are very interesting as far as the numbers games go. All right, let's start with wide receiver. So you draft Kyle Williams at 69. He's making the team, Greg. You've got like 7 or 8 guys right now at wide receiver. How do you feel about this mix, and where could you see this thing kind of unfold?
Yeah, so you look at it. We know the stone cold locks on this roster at receiver are Stephon Diggs whenever he gets healthy, Mac Hollins, and Kyle Williams, the draft pick. I would say Demario Douglas is a near lock, so that's 4. You would think Jalen Polk is a second-round pick, unless if he's a complete disaster in camp or the offseason, like he's gone. Like as we've seen, this regime has doesn't hold any sentiment for anybody, captains, draft picks, whatever, of what the prior regime did. So if you think Jalen Polk, which I do think, with a new coaching staff, I think he's going to be all right. So that's 5 guys right there. All right, that's it. And like normally, the minimum is 5 that a NFL team. You could go 6, possibly 7 if you can go lighter someplace else.
Right.
But really 6 is the top. So now you're talking about Kendrick Bourne, Kayshon Boutte, who's been rumored to be on the trade block, Javon Baker, and then you have other guys like Jacquay Jackson, John Giles. They're signing undrafted free agents that are going to get a shot. So, by the numbers game, not a whole lot of guys are sticking around, and that includes like a guy like Kendrick Bourne. You would think that he makes a lot of sense because he's been in this offense before, but it's a wide open competition. I would say with everybody beyond Demario Douglas to see who grabs like the last 2 or 3 spots on this team.
It's going to be fascinating, and it's exactly what they need to put guys' feet to the fire, like Polk, like Baker, like Boutte. You can't take things for granted. Those 3 guys said a lot last year. At least Boutte did stuff on the field to help the team, but even when he did some things, he didn't help himself with some of the comments he made. So, Boutte, Baker, Polk, pressure's on, and we'll see if it creates any diamonds out of those 3 guys. Left guard, what are you thinking?
So yeah, that's a complete free for all. I mean, I think that you look
like the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, one of those wrestling things that you like to watch and tweet about.
That was very snarky. Damn right, I like wrestling.
That's fine. But I mean, it's crowded. I mean, I think between Jared Wilson, I think is going to get a real shot at this. I mean, like I said, he was a guy that just moved over to center last year, and obviously he's the long-term center. Garrett Bradbury is here as a veteran, but I think he's only guaranteed like $3.8 million.
Yeah.
He does not really have positional versatility because he's a little runt, and he's basically center's the only position that he can play. But, you could totally see something where, Jared Wilson moves over to left guard. I think it's going to be between Wilson, Cole Strange, Layden Robinson. You have the free agent Wes Schweitzer, and City So all fighting it out at left guard. Normally you pick two guys, maybe three, so you're gonna have a starter. There's normally like a swing interior guy, and Wilson is obviously going to be the backup at center should Bradbury go down. But anything can happen. Cole Strange could be gone. He's in a contract year. I'm rooting for Layden Robinson to really flourish in year 2 under this new coaching staff, because I do think he has a lot of talent. He just needs the coaching and development. And but it's wide open beyond Jared Wilson on who's going to stick and who's going to play at left guard.
The good news is you at least have names, and some of these guys, I don't want to say credentials, that might be a bit of a reach, but I mean, you got a former first-round pick in Cole Strange. You've got Layden Robinson. So you have options there. City So, if you go back to 2023, you've got options. And so I don't think the guy at left guard has to be spectacular. If he's average, if he's fine, if he's good, then you could survive with that. Last one I want to ask you about is the safety room, especially after the addition of Woodson.
Yeah, it's crowded. And I don't know, it all depends. We're going to be dealing with a new scheme. We don't exactly know what these guys are looking for in different spots. Do they definitely have free safeties? Do they definitely have strong safeties? I mean, we know that Craig Woodson is going to be here. You would expect Kyle Duggar, given the contract extension, that he's going to be here. Is he possibly a trade candidate? I don't know. That means, so that's two guys. That means Jabril Peppers, Marte Mapu, free agent Marcus Epps, who didn't get a lot of money, Jalen Hawkins, who they re-signed, and Del Pettis are fighting for 2 or 3 spots. I mean, considering his off-field issues last year, it would not be a surprise if they moved on from Peppers. I mean, Marte Mapu, I still don't know what kind of position he has. Again, it's a new scheme. We don't know how Vrabel views those guys. I mean, could he be sort of a nickel option? Eliot Wolf was asked about nickel options beyond Marcus Jones the other day. Marte Mapu was not mentioned. It was all like, some of the cornerbacks there, like Isaiah Bolden and
Marcellus Dial.
Marcellus Dial. That's the guy that I was thinking of. Again, heavy competition there, and I'm not sure how it's going to shake out.
Competition is not a bad thing, and it's what Mike Vrabel wants to set at as many positions as possible that makes sense for him in this football team, and that's what it's all about. If you want to start to build the culture, if you want to get guys who care about what they do, you want to get the right people in that locker room, competitions are very good things. And so let these guys compete. Let them go out there. Let Jalen Polk earn it. Let Javon Baker earn it. Let City So earn it. That's the whole point of this thing. So, and the Patriots, I think, have done enough this offseason to set themselves up to have those competitions and let the best man win. It's as simple as that. All right, he's Greg. I'm Nick. We're out of here. We'll talk to you soon. Appreciate every single one of you.